Miami was down to just 9 active players on Monday night, but luckily they were facing the Wizards, who don't have any NBA players on their rosters. We break down the game and Bam Adebayo's major milestone on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Have a great show for you today. Bam Adebayo is forcing a conversation about his place among Heat greats, and we're going to hand out some credit cookies in a minute. But first, recording this on Monday night after the Heat beat the Wizards 106-90. The Heat had only 9 guys available, but it didn't matter because they were playing the Wizards. They cruised to this win. Some highlights: Terry Rozier tried to throw a lob to Tyler Herro. It worked in the way that they got the points. Did not work because Tyler Herro just said, nope, going to stop right here. Going to just go ahead and take this layup. I don't know who you think you're throwing it to. Kyle Anderson was playing center. The Heat were playing a bunch of zone. No Khalil Ware in this game. No Andrew Wiggins in this game. No Davion Mitchell in this game. No Jaime Jaquez Jr. in this game. Like I said, so they were down a bunch of different guys. They had to start Kevin Love. Kyle Anderson was the backup center. So we also got some Pell Larson minutes. We also got the Pell Larson career high, 16 points. And the headline from this game: Bam becomes the Heat's all-time leader in double-doubles with 222, something that he accomplished in the first half in front of previous record holder Ronnie Cycli. We're going to talk about Bam's double-double record in a minute, but he notched the record on a night when he was also the best player on the floor, David. And on a night that was just begging the Heat to just take care of business, don't play with your food. This is the worst team in the league by record, by roster, by eye test, by advanced metrics. This is by far the worst team in the league. Just don't screw this up. On the second night of a back-to-back, Miami Heat took care of business. Nice little bounce-back win. And again, in that game that was just begging you to just take care of business, it was also begging Bam Adebayo to be the best player on the court because he was the best player on the court. And he also did what he was supposed to do. He was the best player on the floor. And I thought he set the tone, and the Heat cruised to a win.
Yeah, I think it's hard to take too much positive out of this one particular game because they're coming back from a loss against the New York Knicks on Sunday night, another blown lead, and then they go on to face the Wizards, and that's kind of the cure for all that ails you. And so it's positive in that regard. Again, nothing too significant. You can't take anything significant away from this game, really, because you beat a bad team that's designed to lose, and you do almost the bare minimum, and it gets you to a victory, and that's enough, especially when you're down several key players. You're missing 3 starters. I mean, that was already a challenging thing for them, and it could have been a disastrous night for Miami, but they're just good enough to not lose to the Washington Wizards. So I don't know.
They won by 16 points. I don't know about just good enough. They handled the Wizards in this game. They did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, again, that sounds like the bare minimum, right? To do what you're supposed to do. I mean, you're supposed to beat the bad teams, especially if you don't consider yourself to be one of them. Although,
what would they have to have done to make you feel like amazing about this? Like win by 40? Would that have even mattered?
30 point drubbing,
they were up by 26 and they pulled their starters. I think that's okay.
I mean, they were comfortable. They had a nice lead, but it wasn't like a dominant performance. I saw some good things. Bam was great. Tyler was okay. Duncan and Pell Larson were good. But, they were playing players that probably shouldn't have been getting significant minutes. And, Slow-Mo, he was the backup. Kevin Love certainly shouldn't have been getting much playing time, although he did have some nice rebounding early in the game. I think he had 7 rebounds in the first few minutes of play, so he's still capable of doing some pretty solid things overall. Terry Rozier, unfortunately, an okay game for him, and probably one of his better games in recent stretch. Certainly he struggled to score, and while he wasn't particularly effective, he wasn't a reason for them to lose either. So it's a positive.
They had 9 players, David. They're missing like 3 starters. I don't know, man.
I'm a little surprised that you're trying to convince me that this was something positive. Like, I mean, they did the job. It's not negative.
Okay.
It's not positive. It's
They
just
did what
it
they
was
had
a
to do.
game.
Okay, so
It was a Monday night game they won, and that's good.
it's good. Good is positive. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Miami has won 3 of their last 4 games. That's positive.
There you go.
And I have
That
been
is positive.
begging this Heat team just a winning stretch. I don't need 10-game winning streaks like Cleveland is doing. I don't expect you to be the Cavaliers. I don't expect that. Just a winning stretch. And they were a miserable fourth quarter away from winning 4 games in a row against the Knicks. But they've now won 3 out of 4. And they are starting now to put together, and now there's some tough games coming up on the schedule. Cleveland on Wednesday night, Minnesota Friday, back-to-back against Chicago on Saturday. So there's a little bit of a tougher stretch here coming up. But if you can win 2 out of those 3, then we're talking about a stretch where we're winning 5 of 7 games. We're still on a roll here. And this is sort of what I've wanted to see this Heat team, especially post Jimmy Butler trade. Can you just put a stretch together where you look like a real serious, capable of winning basketball team? And I think we're getting that here. And you know what's really impressed me over these last few games, David, is the ball movement. 31 assists tonight. 5 different players with at least 5 assists in this game. Over the last 4 games, Miami is 39 assists, 34 assists, 29 assists, and 31 assists. That's a nice mark. And I asked Eric Spoelstra about this after the game, and he took that opportunity, and he kind of read my mind. He was like, he kind of said, he answered it exactly the way I was hoping he would, where he zoomed out and said, since the change, he calls it the change.
The change.
Was that a horror film?
No, but it certainly sounds like it could be.
It could be, right? A lot of the seasons felt like a horror film, but since the change, he says the Heat have been playing some really good basketball, and he said, I know that the results haven't necessarily spoken to that. I know that, there's a high expectation in Miami and all of this stuff, but he firmly believes that there's really good basketball being played and that their best basketball is ahead of them. And I think these assist numbers kind of highlight some of the good stuff that's happening.
Yes. Again, I feel I'm not usually negative on this team, but
I don't know what's
just
going
need
on.
to see something. I just need to see something overwhelmingly positive. They need to do something to impress Heat fans and me. I mean, they don't have to. Like, I mean, obviously, my opinion doesn't matter.
Of course they do.
Fans' opinions don't really matter.
Your opinion does
But
matter.
at the same time, that's
why we have this podcast.
I appreciate that, but I see this team, and you're beating bad teams. You're doing fine. It was a nice win against the Indiana Pacers on Friday. Unfortunately, a tough loss against the Knicks a couple of days later. The passing numbers, I think, certainly indicate that they're sharing the ball. It's not a lot of slowing down the offense. It's not the kind of sluggishness that you've seen from this team at different stretches during the course of the season. Not a lot of ball hogging, obviously. It's not any one dominant player just saying, give me the damn ball and I'll take care of business, for better or for worse. So I think that's part of it, is that they're moving the ball and they're trying to create offense and they're trying to generate looks for everyone on this team. So it's a much more egalitarian offense. I also think that's reflective of the fact that they don't have a superstar who can just take the ball and say, give it to me. I'm going to take over and dominate a game for a long stretch. So that's the flip side of that. To your overall point of the season and whether or not it's a positive stretch here to win 3 or 4, it needs something. It needs a signature win. And
crown jewel. Again,
it needs something where you can say, wow, this is a team that's figured it out. And maybe it's just a matter of not being healthy. Maybe it would have been tonight. Maybe it would have been against the Knicks had Andrew Wiggins and Jaime Jaquez played. Maybe that would have been just enough to defend Jalen Brunson, or maybe they would have kept Brunson from going off in the fourth quarter. I don't know. It's possible. Maybe if Khalil Ware hadn't gotten hurt.
If Tyler Herro's mid-range jumper goes in at the end of the fourth quarter, all of a sudden you feel a lot better about this team.
Maybe. Again, it's still a tough one because they were dominant for so much of the game, and unfortunately they just squandered another double-digit lead. So it feels like it's just part of an all too familiar recipe that's not particularly good. I mean, it's like, oh, mom's meatloaf. Well, mom's meatloaf sucks, and she keeps making it. It's easy for her to make, but it's the same thing over and over, and it's not that dynamic. And sometimes the meatloaf is not atrocious. I don't know if that analogy necessarily works as well.
I just
but
like that
I
you
think
described Mom's Meatloaf as not that dynamic.
yeah.
I'll tell you the one thing about
Which,
this meatloaf, not very dynamic.
which is
Meatloaf in general,
pretty,
I would not say is
yes,
dynamic. That's
exactly.
sort of the whole point of
Exactly.
meatloaf.
Right. It's a simple recipe, and unfortunately, it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and more often than not, with this team, it just hasn't worked. So that's
I
what I'm
see
looking
where
for.
you're
I'm
coming
looking
from.
forward to
I see where you're coming from. Look, I'm not sitting here being like, now I expect the Heat to make a run in the playoffs because they beat the
No, I
Wizards,
get that.
right?
I get that.
I'm just saying, like, the expectations have to be managed here, and they should be higher than just beating the Wizards. But winning 3 out of 4, they are starting to build the thing that I've been asking for. If suddenly this becomes 5 out of 7, if this becomes 7 out of 9, 8 out of 10 games, if that's how we get there, right? Then I don't really care who you're beating. That's a good stretch. In the NBA, that's a good stretch of basketball. And look, I don't know what's going to happen because we don't know. It doesn't sound like Khalil Ware is going to be playing Wednesday. He said his MRI came back clean and that he doesn't expect to miss out a lot of time. And while that is positive sounding, it's not an official timetable, and it doesn't exactly sound like he'll be on the plane going to Cleveland. And then obviously with Wiggins and Jaime and all these guys with their ankles and stuff. So I don't expect them, in other words, to beat Cleveland without a bunch of their important players, even though they beat Cleveland with some of their important players earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But, Minnesota at home, Chicago at home, like these are winnable games. And if you start winning those, then you start to feel a little bit better about what this thing is. But
If you can win 2 out of the next 3, my reaction will be much more ebullient.
This meatloaf, it'll be a little bit more dynamic of a meatloaf stretch.
Yeah, the ketchup really adds something to that meatloaf.
Ketchup is very important to meatloaf.
Apparently.
From what I understand about meatloaf. Credit Cookies is next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Happened just a few days ago when Steph Curry went off against the Orlando Magic. Well, if you were a Dash Pass member, you could have taken advantage of that 56-point outing with a game day feast after a big performance
Didn't
like that.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just score 50?
Did he drop 51?
I think he had another 50 burger tonight.
Take advantage. If you're a Dash Pass member, guess what? You get to order wings, pizza,
51.
burgers from your favorite spot, whatever. You can have them delivered straight to your door. Let's say you're craving something late at night. You want to stay up to watch highlights, or maybe you just have a long night at work. Dash Pass will grab something delicious and help you save big money. Maybe you're looking for lunch on the go. You've got meetings all day. You're kind of stuck and you got a meal that you want to save some money on. Guess what? Quick and easy lunch the next day. Dash Pass will get you your favorite meal with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. So sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save when any player scores 50 or more, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, in a game. Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms do apply, but visit DoorDash to learn more. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter. One stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com.
Strange sound. Familiar, though. And hopefully, to your point, much more familiar in the future. Let's see if they can string some wins together. That's a positive I can hang my hat on. If there's more wins coming, again, the Cleveland Cavaliers, a daunting challenge, even at full strength, and it seems like you're unlikely to be at full strength. But if you can come back home and beat an okay Minnesota team, and then rally for a second straight win against the Chicago Bulls, I'd be much more, again, enthused about what Miami is building of late.
10 credit cookies to hand out. Who's getting them, David?
I've got a few players getting credit cookies, 4 to be exact. We'll start off with Bam Adebayo. Again, as you mentioned, best player on the floor by a fairly wide margin. Had a monster rebounding night, 15 rebounds. Also had 5 assists, 2 steals, a block to go with his 19 points on 7 of 16 shooting. Unfortunately, not hitting the free. the 3-pointer, but able to get to the free throw line. He went 5 of 6 as well. So a great overall game for him. I gave him 3 credit cookies.
Considering that you're giving credit cookies to 4 different players, I think that's fine. I don't know that anybody, knowing you, Pell Larson's going to end up with 3, but TBD on that, I suppose.
Nope. Let's get right into that because Pell Larson does absolutely get 3. He gets 3. It was again a positive outing for him. I think his minutes were impactful. Like he was showing the effort, and we've talked about sometimes that effort doesn't translate into anything actually positive. In this case tonight, I think it was. And maybe, again, it's just a matter of playing the Wizards and that effort kind of manifests in a way that's much more impactful. But I think that, he made some really smart plays, forced turnovers, did a great job of kind of being a nuisance, harassing Marcus Smart, Keshawn George, like whoever he was guarding, he seemed to make their life a lot more difficult. And he had a knack for being in the right place at the right time and finding ways to score. Comfortable on a fast break 3 opportunity that forced a timeout. I really liked his game overall. It just felt like a really good, solid game. I don't know that we're going to get those consistently. He hasn't gotten a lot of playing time, and he hasn't earned it. Like, from what we've seen, he's far too erratic and not nearly productive enough to get consistent playing time. But nights like tonight show that he can be a solid, impactful player on occasion.
So these are Pell Larson's first credit cookies since November 24th. And yeah, he's not going to get much playing time, and that's okay. I don't want him to get a lot of playing time. He's a second-round pick. Right. He shouldn't be getting a lot of playing time. It's fine. Wing minutes are hard to come by on this Miami Heat roster, and that's a good thing. But when you're down to 9 players because of a bunch of injuries and he's able to step in, that's awesome. Right? That's a really good sign, and I like Pell Larson a lot. I thought he was tremendous in this game, and there was a stretch there in the fourth quarter. Washington was starting to claw into. They were making their push. They're making their comeback, and
right.
Pell Larson had a run-out dunk and a catch-and-shoot 3, put the Heat back up by 19 points. And I don't know that they necessarily needed that to seal the game. It doesn't feel like it, but it did make you feel a little bit more comfortable. And Paypas played shortly after that at the arena. So congrats to Pell Larson. 3 well-deserved credit cookies.
I also gave 2 credit cookies to Duncan Robinson, who seems to be a little bit of a surge of late. He's got 17 points, 7 of 13 shooting overall, 3 of 7 from 3-point range, also 3 assists. Just 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. So not a great playmaking game for him, but he was looking to score. He was a little bit more dynamic as a scorer. I thought his minutes were really solid coming off the bench. Again, on a night when you're shorthanded, you need everybody to find a ways to step up, and Duncan certainly did that. And then lastly...
Wait. Sorry, last thing on Duncan.
Yeah.
If meatloaf is not dynamic, then what is dynamic as a food?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I'm the worst. I'm a terrible eater. I don't know.
What would be a dynamic food? Like what is dynamic even? Like something that's it's like one of those
energetic. When you go to those, gives you a pep.
Like when you go to the restaurant and they actually like assemble the like those like really fancy restaurants where you go and they actually assemble the dish in front of you. Is tableside guacamole dynamic?
No, it is not. You know what? I have got a major bone to pick. There's a Mexican restaurant near where you live by Mary Brickell Village.
You don't want to name names. I understand that, but I think I know the one you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, and a former coworker of mine, went all day talking about, like, she said, just went to this place and made it sound like it was this amazing cultural experience. They come up to the table and they mash the avocados, and it was like, oh, okay, sounds impressive. And I thought this guacamole was great. Man, that was the most lackluster, undynamic meatloaf-like guacamole I've ever had in my life. It was not really dynamic at all. It sure was mixing a nice, mortar and pestle kind of thing. And I get it. It was like, okay, maybe for tourists or people who don't see these things regularly or aren't particularly ethnic, maybe it seems like it's very dynamic, but it certainly was not the case. So again, I'm not naming names.
If you're from somewhere where guacamole is now ethnic, like we're 20 years past guacamole being like, that's like saying sushi is ethnic now. It's like, come on.
Oh, no, I still think there are people who believe that for certain. I mean,
sure, not in Florida. Well, not in South Florida.
Yeah. I mean, there's South Florida, and then there's South Georgia. Yeah, so.
Where I went to college. Very different. So I don't remember what we were talking about. So what are the rest of your credit cookies?
Guacamole. We were talking
Oh,
about.
wait, no,
No,
sorry. Duncan
we're
Robinson.
talking
One
about
last
Duncan
thing.
Robinson.
I loved how he was getting to the basket. You mentioned it wasn't a big playmaking game for him. Didn't need to be. He was like,
Yeah.
I could just get
Right.
to the rim. Why would I pass it now? A lot of Duncan's playmaking comes out of attacking that closeout, those really hard closeouts, because he's such a threat from three-point
Yeah.
range. And it's not a short roll because obviously he's attacking those closeouts, but it kind of feels that way sometimes. And then he'll just sort of spray it out, or sometimes he'll find somebody on a lob that's sort of overhelping.
Right.
And in this instance, like the Wizards, their defense is literally, it's so bad where
It is.
one guy attacks the closeout and the rest of the guys just stand there. And Duncan Robinson is like, I guess I'll just go to the basket now. And he did that, and then he shoved somebody over on a layup. I couldn't really see who it
I think that
was.
was a little bit of a flop. I think that on the replay at home, it looked like a little bit of a flop. I know what you're talking about. He kind of
Yeah,
created a little space with the off arm.
it was nice.
I think
Either way, it was
I think
nice on
Bub
Duncan.
Carrington might have been Bub Carrington
Mhm.
who he crossed over on,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like you don't really see that too often. But he had
Mm-mm.
the whole kind of dribble package going tonight, and it worked out really well for him. So good, solid overall game. To your point, able to get to the rim, finish it right. He had one layup attempt that he totally botched. I think he wound up drawing a foul on though. But other than that, I didn't. Not much to
Yeah.
nitpick from him. And
He had a
then
really
lastly,
nice. He had a really nice like stop start move off the dribble too in the first quarter that I was really impressed by. Also,
hey, if you could freeze Victor Wembanyama with that, you know,
well then you could
you've
definitely
got
beat the
something
Wizards.
going. So I mean, like defensive player of the year, my ass is what Duncan says. He just cross him over and makes him look like like a rookie out there,
Like
which
the
is
Wizards.
exactly what he was. Yeah, well, there you have it. Two credit cookies. The last two credit cookies go to Tyler Hero.
Yep.
Again, not a monster performance from him, but only 26 minutes played, 6 of 10 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3-point range, 3 rebounds, 6 assists. So definitely some nice playmaking chops from Tyler, despite the fact that he didn't have a consistent lob threat or anything like that. And a really solid overall game. So he gets credit cookies. He just didn't have a monster performance, so he couldn't get more. But at the same time, I think it was impactful and it was just enough. That seems to be the theme of the night. It was just enough to help beat this Washington team.
A business-like game for Tyler Hero, right? Just come out, went 6 of 10, led the team in assists. Not like a crazy margin. Led the team in assists, did what I had to do. Nothing crazy. I think we need. Can we steal a credit cookie from somebody and give it to Kyle Anderson? It wasn't a box score popping game, but that's a tough spot for Kyle Anderson to be in. It's like, okay, now you're going to be our backup 5 with no size on the court. I know it was against the Wizards, but still, it's not a position he's used to playing. You're also going to play zone as a 5. And Eric Spoelstra said after the game, he doesn't know that Kyle Anderson has ever played zone as a 5. That was a tough spot to put him in, and he delivered. Again, his box score's not crazy, just 4 points, but he kind of did it everywhere. 5 points, 4 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Like he was kind of doing all of it.
I get it. I understand that. I mean, it was a challenge for him, and he certainly stepped up in pretty solid fashion. So if you want to take away from Pella,
all right, let's do
I'm
that.
okay with that.
And then that way we get, I think Kyle Anderson already has previous.
He's got cookies before.
Yeah, he's got the from the Toronto game, I think. All right, that's credit cookies. Coming up next, Bam has the franchise record for double doubles. You might be surprised what record he's coming on next. Which one he could break next? That's coming up on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. Are you running a small business? Well, that means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number, but that's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few cups of coffee, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off 6 months. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Before we get to BAM, listener questions. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions via the Locked On Heat Insider community. You can sign up with the link in the show notes. Cameron writes in, did Pell Larson do enough to earn more minutes? David, what do you think?
No. I wish I could. I like the game. I like seeing him play. Again, I've said this all along, even from the preseason, that he was going to be a Heat fan favorite. Like, you talk about him similarly to what we've seen from Davion Mitchell, minus the 3-point shot that's been falling at an incredibly high rate for Davion. But the effort, the tenacity, he doesn't give up, makes the most of what's clearly a lack of elite athleticism and talent. And he's still trying his best out there. And so you love and appreciate a guy who can maximize what little skill he may have. As far as the NBA context is concerned, like, he's obviously a skilled NBA player, but when talking about NBA skills, he's probably in the lower rung of the ladder there. That being said, I mean, you're missing several players that are above him in the rotation, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. Like, he's not going to supplant Haywood Highsmith. He's not going to supplant Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, you just go through the list. Even. I mean, he's sort of the swingman type where he can play the 2, the 3 a little bit. So you just everybody at that spot. He's Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, Andrew Wiggins, Haywood Highsmith, Kyle Anderson, Alec Burks. Even like he's not. Maybe you can make an argument that he should take minutes over Burks. Maybe in certain matchups, if you want to get up and down the court a little bit, maybe you could take minutes away from Kyle Anderson. There's still 4 guys in front of him, even in that context. So, love Pell Larson. But can we? This is the whole thing. Heat fans, it's okay to just have the nice thing. All right, you have this guy coming off the bench. You don't have to immediately insert him into the starting lineup. Let's just manage expectations here a little bit. But Bam Adebayo is the huge kind of zoom out headline here. He becomes the franchise leader for double doubles by getting his 222nd double double tonight. And he did it in front of Ronnie Cycli, which I think was a really cool moment for everybody and the organization. Cycli really classy to just come to the home game and be there courtside while it was happening. Bam talked about how relieving it was to get this thing done. Talked about he was basically chasing it for the last 3 games, hoping to just get it out of the way. Before we get into some big picture stuff with Bam, what did you think about the double-double record, Bam owning it? Like, what does that mean for Bam, for the Heat, for this organization, even just symbolically?
Look, I'll be honest with you. Some part of me is a little jaded in that it seems a little arbitrary. It's like, oh, the double-double. I know that kind of means something, but it doesn't really mean. I mean, like, if he has a 35-point, game and only has 9 rebounds, no one's going to care about the fact that he missed a rebound. But if he has this double-double record, I think it shows a consistency of effort. I think it shows the fact that despite, the fact that he was behind Hassan Whiteside for a couple of his early seasons, that he was still putting in the work and still kind of building towards something positive. And over the last few seasons in which he's been an all-star, multi-time all-star, a starter, he just continues to impact the game in a positive way. And I think that's what the record reflects more than anything else.
So when Bam was a rookie, Eric Spoelstra, Bam, it's very famous how he didn't get any playing time. You mentioned him being behind Hassan Whiteside. He really wasn't playing much. And him and Eric Spoelstra were having a conversation during Bam's rookie year. And Eric Spoelstra just said, look, you're a developmental player. And he had to make that clear to Bam. And Bam was wondering why the Heat organization even drafted him when he was a rookie. And to go from that to this, where he's the torchbearer of Heat culture, he is the face of the franchise, and with Jimmy Butler gone, for him to now establish himself as the double-double leader, there's other records that he's about to. He's still rising up leaderboards, and he's 27 years old. He's young in his career. He's right now in the thick of his prime right now. He's going to keep climbing these leaderboards in this post-Jimmy Butler era as long as he's with the Miami Heat, and I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. And so this is symbolically important to me. It is sort of, hey, you already took the baton in terms of Heat culture. Now you're taking the baton and running with a lot more. The franchise leader in double-doubles. You're rising up the points. Let's just do this now. So I was curious. Okay, he's the franchise leader in double doubles. Where else is he on Heat leaderboards? He's 4th in games played already. He's
Jesus.
5th in minutes played already.
Unbelievable.
He's 2nd in rebounds behind, of course, Udonis Haslem. Which great moment during the post game press conference. Haslem FaceTimes Bam to congratulate him on the double double record, and Bam walks into the post game presser with UD on his FaceTime. And UD's like, look, I love this guy. I don't love him that much. He doesn't get to have my rebound record. Let's make sure he doesn't get that. He can have all the other records. So UD loves his rebound
You
record.
think he'll catch him?
So he has him as 5,791 career rebounds. Bam is 4,837. He's going to catch him.
He's going to catch him.
He's going to catch him. He's 5th in blocks. He's 4th in points. He's 4th in points in Heat history.
Okay. Behind Dwayne, LeBron.
Behind D-Wade. He'll never catch D-Wade. Alonzo and Glenn Rice.
Alonzo and Glenn Rice. Not even LeBron or Jimmy. Huh. I'm a little surprised.
So Bam passed LeBron this season.
Okay.
Jimmy's 8th. Jimmy's behind Ronnie Cycli.
There you go.
These are regular season counts, people. Jimmy only has... Jimmy's only like less than 100 than Udonis Haslem. Now, Udonis Haslem played 20 years in Miami, so that's probably why.
Sure.
Bam is going to catch... Bam is going... As long as he doesn't get hurt, Bam's going to be 2nd all time in points scored in a Heat uniform by the middle of next season. He's going to pass Glenn Rice and Alonzo Mourning. He probably will never pass Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade is the franchise leader with 21,556. Alonzo Mourning is 2nd with 9,459. So it's not even half.
Kind of shows more of the fact that Miami has acquired these players and they've only really managed to really be impactful for a few seasons. I mean, you got this big 3 era, obviously. Chris Bosh winds up, having the life-threatening injuries.
LeBron's 5th on this list in 4 years.
Despite, it was a monster 4 years, though. I could see why.
Yes, it was.
But yeah, that's to speak about Bam's overall legacy. Like he's going to be one of the best players in Heat history.
Yes.
And I don't know how people are going to perceive that, because even now, like this season, obviously when he was struggling, people really turned on Bam. He's just a glorified role player. Trade him. His value's at an all-time low. Get rid of him, etc. And he might wind up being, he's going to be one of the top record setters for this franchise that has had a lot of success and had a lot of great Hall of Fame level players. And somehow Bam is just going to continue to work. So it's just really interesting. If anything, it's kind of more reflective of the team culture. Like we've talked a lot recently about Heat culture, but he's not going to be, and I hate to use the word for like a million times this episode, he's not ever going to be dynamic as Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade was one of one, and he was incredible. Obviously, his career is unparalleled in a Heat uniform, and the consistency that which he played over the course of several seasons. But Bam is just steady, workmanlike, making the most of his opportunity, excelling, and despite not really ever being a superstar, he's going to be a great NBA player. He's going to have a case to be on the Mount Rushmore of Heat franchise history.
That's where I wanted to go with this. He's not yet.
No.
It's D-Wade, it's Zoe. You could start debating the other. I think Zoe. Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we're just doing players, obviously, if we're not including
LeBron,
coaches and
Jimmy.
stuff. LeBron and Jimmy. Maybe you make a case for UD, perhaps, if you want.
Yes.
Tim Hardaway. Like you can make arguments for other players.
I won't make a case for Hardaway. I've said
I would not either.
I still think Goran Dragic had a better Heat career than Tim Hardaway did.
You and I agree on that. But Bam is 3 All-Stars, 2 gold medals, which I don't know if that counts for the Heat Mount Rushmore, but is winning, right? 3 All-Stars, climbing up these records, has been to 2 NBA Finals. That matters, right? A 2-time Eastern Conference Finals champion and made huge plays and huge contributions, obviously, during those runs, was the second best player on those teams. That stuff really matters. And like you said, laid the groundwork for whatever it is that Heat culture has become during whatever this era has been. He needs the ring. That gets him on the Mount Rushmore. But what he's doing right now is he's putting the rest of the resume together, man. Like the entire, like the whole foundation of that resume is here. He's gonna be like he'll 5, 6 All-Stars in the next, 3 or 4 seasons. He'll probably accomplish that. Right? The only reason he wasn't an All-Star was he was in this like uncharacteristic shooting slump to start the year. He'll be an All-Star again next year. So he's established himself as a perennial All-Star. He's going to keep doing that. And once that eventually and hopefully when he gets at least one ring, that's going to click everything into place. And there's going to be no question between the individual accolades, the winning at the highest level, and then his spot on these leaderboards. He'll never surpass Dwayne Wade, probably. He won't. He'll never surpass Dwayne Wade. But everything past Dwayne Wade, that's up for grabs for Bam. That's up for grabs.
I can't argue that,
Right?
This is why we are different than most fans, or at least that percentage of fans that seems to be a very vocal, I would say, minority. I think the majority still appreciate what Bam does, but there are fans that unfortunately don't appreciate what he does because it's not so productive, or it just doesn't stand out, or doesn't shine the way it does.
Because he doesn't score 35 points per game. That's why. But I've always said with Bam, he scores 20 points per game and then does everything else at an elite level at his position. And I think I would really hope that Heat fans can learn to appreciate that. And it's glaring when you don't have that 30-point per game score.
Yeah.
But if Bam were to have that, I think it would wash away everything else, that everybody else's concerns, because the Heat fans just want that 30-point, and the Heat do need that 30-point per game score. Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be on Bam to also be that. He could still be one of your all-time great players without having to be one of the best players in the league defensively, while also being one of the best. Like him being a 25-point per game scorer with those world-class defense would make him one of the 5 best players in the NBA.
No doubt, we've made that talk. We've had that conversation before. Like,
so can we appreciate somebody a little? That's one of the best 20 players in the NBA, one of the best 30 players in the, wherever we rank them. That's not important to me right now. That's sort of where I'm at with Bam, and it was a rough start to the year, but he's really playing well lately. He's playing awesome basketball. I mean, if he keeps this up, David, he could make an All-NBA team this year. Like,
that'll be a little tricky.
I mean, there's a lot of attrition right now because of the injuries. Yeah. But he'll at least make it eligibility wise. He's going to play 65 games. So
to be in the conversation, which is not something that we would have ever dreamt of saying in November or December when he was really struggling offensively. But over the last month or so, I mean, I think we've seen a very positive change in the player that Heat fans expected him to be, and I think he's lived up to those expectations.
I think this was a better than Meatloaf episode.
I would say so. It's the next step up over Meatloaf. I can't.
Is it better than the? It's certainly better than that tableside guacamole that you had. We're not blind.
Oh yeah.
This is very dynamic. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.